I was a night witch. And what we did after midnight was not a game. When the clock struck 12 a.m., the spiritual world shifted, and people like you became targets. You think you were just sleeping, you were not. Assignments were released, names were called, destinies were marked. Tonight, I am breaking the silence and exposing what was hidden in the dark. After 12 a.m., the atmosphere changes. You feel it sometimes, a strange heaviness, a sudden anxiety, an unexplained wake-up at exactly 3:17 a.m. You thought it was random. It was not. Midnight is not just a time on a clock. It is a spiritual window. When I was inside the coven, we never treated midnight casually. We prepared for it. We fasted before it. We avoided certain foods. We avoided certain conversations. Because once the clock crossed 12 a.m., assignments began. Midnight was activation hour. You must understand something. Darkness is not more powerful than light, but darkness operates when light is sleeping. That is why midnight mattered. At exactly 12 a.m., chants began. Not loud, not dramatic like in movies, quiet, focused, intentional. Names were written on paper, sometimes full names, sometimes just photos, sometimes just an item that belonged to the person, a piece of hair, a handwriting sample, a social media picture printed out. You would be shocked how easily access is gained. Then we would circle the target. Not physically, spiritually. We were taught that every human has a spiritual perimeter, a hedge, a covering. If that hedge is weak, cracked, or compromised through sin, trauma, unforgiveness, or occult exposure, access becomes easier, and midnight is when cracks widen. After 12 a.m., we release 3 main assignments: oppression, confusion, delay. Oppression first. You call it random sadness. You call it sudden heaviness. You call it, I don't know why I feel this way. But sometimes it is an arrow. We would speak exhaustion over people who were on the edge of breakthrough. If someone was about to launch a business, we targeted their confidence. If someone was about to get married, we targeted their emotions. If someone was close to spiritual growth, we targeted their sleep, because if we could not destroy you physically, we would drain you mentally. After 12 a.m., we specialized in dream infiltration. This is real. Not every dream is spiritual. But some are doorways. We were trained to watch patterns. If someone consistently woke between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., we focused on them. That window is spiritually active. It is when the body is most vulnerable and the conscious mind is quiet. We would project symbols, water, snakes, sexual encounters, falling, being chased. You thought it was your imagination. But spiritual symbols carry messages. Water can represent emotional drowning. Snakes can represent manipulation. Sexual dreams can create spiritual bonds. After those dreams, you wake up tired. Not because you did not sleep, but because something interacted with you. Then comes confusion. After midnight, we targeted clarity. If you were about to make a life-changing decision, we whispered doubt. You would suddenly question everything: your calling, your partner, your worth, your faith. We did not need to scream. A whisper is enough when the mind is tired. Confusion delays destiny. And delay was the final assignment. You must understand something else. The enemy rarely attacks with explosions. He attacks with slow erosion. After 12 a.m., we release cycles, financial cycles, relationship cycles, addiction cycles. If someone's family had a pattern of divorce, we amplified it. If someone's bloodline had poverty, we stirred it. We looked for legal rights. Trauma gives legal rights. Unforgiveness gives legal rights. Occult objects in a home give legal rights. We were trained to search for open doors. A tarot reading done just for fun. A horoscope obsession. A family heirloom connected to rituals. Music played repeatedly that glorifies darkness. You think it is harmless. But spiritually, doors matter. Midnight was when we tested doors. Sometimes nothing worked. Sometimes a person was too covered. And when someone was spiritually guarded, we felt resistance immediately. It was like hitting a wall. Prayers matter more than you realize. There were nights when we attempted to send oppression, and it bounced back. Those were the nights we stopped immediately, because backlash is real. If someone was actively praying, worshiping, or living in obedience, their spiritual perimeter was strengthened. But if someone was distracted, bitter, living double-minded, access became easier. After 12 a.m., we also monitored reactions. Did the person wake up anxious? Did they argue the next day? Did they feel drained? We observed outcomes. Because spiritual warfare is strategic. You think attacks are random. They are not. There is timing, there is coordination, there is intention. But listen carefully. Even inside that darkness, I saw something that terrified us. Authority. There were individuals who would wake up at 3 a.m. and start praying. Not casually, violently. Declaring protection, declaring the blood of Jesus, breaking assignments. And when that happened, our rituals lost force. The energy shifted. The target became the warrior. Those nights ended quickly, because midnight can work both ways. The same hour used for darkness can be used for breakthrough. That is what they never told you. Midnight is not owned by witches. It is a gateway. And whoever understands authority controls the outcome. I am telling you this because ignorance makes you vulnerable, but awareness makes you dangerous. After 12 a.m., things happen. But not everything that happens is unstoppable. You are not helpless. You were never meant to sleep through battles without protection. And if you have been waking up consistently at strange hours, if you have been experiencing sudden emotional waves, if you feel like something presses on you at night, do not dismiss it, discern it. Because what we did after midnight was strategic. But what you can do after midnight is stronger. Midnight was never random. But the real work began long before 12 a.m. You were not attacked by accident. You were studied. Before any ritual, before any chant, before any assignment was released, there was observation. We were trained to watch patterns, not from a distance, up close, sometimes through social circles, sometimes through family connections, sometimes through social media. You reveal more than you think. Your fears, your desires, your frustrations, your relationship cracks, every post, every emotional outburst, every public argument. It became data. You must understand this clearly. Dark systems operate on information. If we knew you were insecure about your appearance, we targeted your confidence. If we knew you were desperate for love, we targeted your relationships. If we knew you were ambitious, we targeted your finances. Nothing was random. We created spiritual profiles. Who is this person? What wounds unhealed? What doors are already open? Because an attack is most effective when it aligns with your existing weakness. That is how people think it's just life, but it was engineered. Sometimes we mark people through emotional ties. If someone in your family was already involved in occult practices, that became a bridge. Bloodlines matter in spiritual warfare, not because you are cursed automatically, but because patterns repeat when not broken. If your grandmother practiced rituals, if your father carried addiction, if your mother operated in manipulation, those traits create familiar territory. Spirits recognize patterns. and familiarity creates access. There are also physical markers. Objects carry attachment. Jewelry received from someone involved in rituals. Gifts given with hidden intention. Decorations in your home with spiritual symbolism you never researched. You thought it was cultural. But symbols speak. We used contact points, a photo, a signature, a date of birth. These are not magical by themselves, but intention activates them. And once a name was spoken repeatedly in ritual, a mark was established. Not visible to your eyes, but registered in the spirit realm. That mark signaled, monitor this one. Then came timing. We did not strike during your strength. We waited for your weakness. After heartbreak, after job loss, after betrayal, after trauma. Because pain lowers spiritual defense. When you are wounded, you question everything. When you are tired, you pray less. When you are angry, you speak carelessly. Words matter more than you realize. If you say, I give up. If you say, nothing ever works for me. If you say, I don't care anymore. Those statements are invitations. Not because words are magic, but because agreement creates alignment, and alignment creates access. We looked for agreement. Agreement with fear. Agreement with hopelessness. Agreement with identity confusion. Once agreement was established, the mark deepened. Then surveillance intensified. You ever feel like negative cycles follow you? Like every opportunity collapses at the last minute? Like relationships start strong, but end the same way? Patterns are not always coincidence. We reinforced cycles. We amplified small issues. A minor misunderstanding between couples became explosive. A small financial delay became panic. A small insecurity became obsession. Because escalation is easier when foundation is already cracked. But there is something else you need to hear. Not everyone could be marked. Some people were shielded before we ever tried. There were individuals whose homes felt heavy to us. Not dark heavy. Protected heavy. Like entering a place saturated with prayer. Even attempting to focus on their name caused resistance. It felt like static. Like interference. Those people had active covering. Not religious performance. Active authority. And when someone actively declared protection over their home, their children, their future, marking became difficult because intention works both ways. Just as dark intention attempts to assign, righteous intention cancels assignment. That truth disturbed us because it meant free will mattered. It meant awareness mattered. You are not a puppet. You are not helpless. But ignorance is costly. Many people are marked simply because they do not guard their gates. Your eye gate, your ear gate, your mouth gate, your emotional gate. What you repeatedly consume shapes your spiritual atmosphere. Music that glorifies death. Content that normalizes witchcraft. Entertainment that celebrates darkness. You call it fiction, but repetition desensitizes. And desensitization lowers resistance. Once resistance lowers, marking becomes easier. We did not fear strong believers. We feared disciplined believers. People who guarded what they watched, who controlled what they spoke, who forgave quickly, who prayed strategically. Because discipline closes doors, and closed doors frustrate dark systems. Now listen carefully. If you feel like you have been marked, if attacks feel repetitive, if nights feel heavy, if cycles feel engineered, do not panic. A mark is not ownership. It is an attempt. And every attempt can be revoked. Authority cancels assignment. Repentance closes doors. Prayer rebuilds hedges. Forgiveness removes legal rights. But you must become intentional. Passive faith does not stop strategic darkness. Intentional authority does. What we did before midnight was preparation. We studied, we marked, we timed. But what you can do now is disrupt everything. Because once you become aware of tactics, you stop being an easy target. And the moment you stop being easy, the strategy collapses. There was one night I will never forget. It was not louder than the others. It was not darker than the others. But it was different. Because the assignment was not just oppression, it was destruction. The target was a young man, no fame, no platform, no public influence. But in the spirit, he carried weight. We were told he would impact many lives. We were told his voice would awaken people. We were told his obedience would disrupt systems. So the order came clear: stop him early. That is how darkness works. It rarely attacks when you are visible. It attacks when you are becoming. He had just started changing his life, left old habits, ended toxic relationships, started praying consistently. And that shift triggered attention. When you move toward purpose, resistance increases. That night, his name was written in bold ink, not because he was weak, but because he was rising. We began at 12:03 a.m. Chance focused on delay first. We tried to create frustration, financial pressure, unexpected bills, conflict with friends, because frustration makes you question growth. Then we targeted his mind. Whispers of doubt. You are not called. You are pretending. You will fail publicly. The goal was internal collapse. If a person destroys themselves mentally, no external attack is needed. Around 2:17 a.m., the ritual intensified. We shifted to fear projection, nightmares, images of car accidents, images of public embarrassment, images of betrayal. Fear weakens decision-making. If he woke up anxious, the next day would unravel. But something happened we did not expect. At 3:02 a.m., he woke up, not in panic. Alert, he sat up in his bed. We felt a shift instantly. He did not scroll his phone. He did not turn on the television. He started praying. Not softly, not casually, authoritatively. He declared protection over his mind. He declared peace over his home. He rebuked every unseen assignment. And something broke. The ritual lost alignment. You must understand this. Spiritual attacks require cooperation, not conscious cooperation, but emotional alignment. If fear is received, it anchors. If doubt is entertained, it roots. But he refused agreement. His voice became stronger. He began speaking scripture. He began calling himself chosen. He began thanking God for protection he could not see. Gratitude in warfare is disruptive because it signals faith over fear. By 3:11 a.m., resistance intensified. We felt pressure, backlash, like pushing against a wall that would not move. The assignment did not land, it scattered. And here is the part that changed me. Instead of waking up exhausted, he woke up energized. Instead of confusion, he had clarity. Instead of fear, he had boldness. That day, he made a decision that advanced his destiny. The very night meant to destroy him accelerated him. That terrified us, because it revealed the truth. Attacks can backfire. When someone understands authority, opposition becomes fuel. I began noticing a pattern after that. The strongest people were not the ones never attacked. They were the ones who responded correctly. They guarded their thoughts. They prayed when woken suddenly. They refused to meditate on fear. They did not entertain every emotion as truth. And because of that, destruction failed repeatedly. Let me tell you something clearly. You have had nights like that. Moments where you woke up suddenly. Moments where anxiety tried to grip you. moments where you felt watched, pressured, heavy. But how you respond determines the outcome. If you reach for distraction, the attack lingers. If you reach for authority, the attack collapses. Dark systems rely on passivity, on people assuming everything is coincidence, on believers sleeping spiritually. But when you become alert, strategies weaken. The night we tried to destroy that destiny exposed weakness in our system. We could suggest, we could project, we could attempt, but we could not override free will. We could not overpower declared authority. We could not penetrate disciplined faith. That is why distraction is heavily promoted, because a distracted believer is easier to pressure, but an alert believer is dangerous. After that night, I started questioning everything. If darkness was truly superior, why did it retreat when confronted? If assignments were unstoppable, why did prayer interrupt them? The truth was uncomfortable. Darkness thrives on secrecy, on ignorance, on fear, but exposure weakens it, and authority dismantles it. That young man never knew what happened that night. He just thought he felt led to pray. But that obedience shifted an outcome. You do not need to see the attack to defeat it. You need to respond with awareness. If you are alive, if you are breathing, if you are still pursuing purpose despite resistance, then destruction has already failed. But you must remain alert, because destiny attracts attention. Growth triggers resistance. Breakthrough provokes opposition, not because you are weak, but because you matter. And the moment you understand that attacks are often confirmation of impact, you stop being intimidated. You become strategic. You become disciplined. You become impossible to easily destroy. I did not leave because I was exposed. I left because I saw truth. For years, I believed we were powerful. I believed midnight belonged to us. I believed fear was strength. But the illusion cracked. Not in a dramatic explosion. In quiet moments. Moments when assignments failed. Moments when prayers overpowered rituals. Moments when people we targeted rose stronger instead of collapsing. Darkness depends on intimidation. It magnifies itself. It performs power. But behind the performance, I saw limits. There were territories we could not enter. Homes saturated in prayer felt hostile to us. Not evil hostile, untouchable. There were individuals whose names triggered resistance before we even began. People who lived clean, people who forgave quickly, people who did not entertain bitterness. Holiness is not weakness, it is insulation. And insulation blocks intrusion. I began questioning the system. Why did disciplined believers repel us? Why did midnight worship disrupt carefully planned rituals? Why did simple declarations cancel complex ceremonies? The answer was authority, not emotional hype, not religious routine. Authority rooted in identity. People who knew who they were spiritually were hard to manipulate, because manipulation thrives on insecurity. If you know your worth, flattery fails. If you know your calling, doubt weakens. If you know your protection, fear struggles. We relied heavily on ignorance, on people not understanding their spiritual rights, on believers thinking everything is coincidence, on you dismissing patterns. But when awareness rises, control decreases. That realization unsettled me, because it meant many attacks were unnecessary. They only worked because people did not resist. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Some battles in your life continued longer than necessary, not because you were powerless, but because you were uninformed. The night I decided to leave was not dramatic. It was personal. We attempted to oppress a woman who had just survived trauma. The goal was to push her into isolation, to amplify her pain, to convince her she was forgotten. But that night she did something simple. She worshipped, softly, through tears. No shouting, No theatrics, just surrender and trust. And the atmosphere shifted violently, not loud, but decisive. The assignment dissolved, and instead of breaking, she strengthened. I realized something in that moment. Light does not compete with darkness, it exposes it, and once exposed, darkness loses its mystique. I saw fear evaporate in the presence of faith. I saw complex ritual collapse under simple obedience. I saw midnight transformed into prayer altars. And I understood something I was never taught. Darkness is reactive. It does not create destiny. It only attempts to interrupt it. It does not own midnight. It exploits it. But ownership belongs to authority. And authority belongs to those aligned with truth. So I left, not because darkness stopped existing, but because I saw its boundaries. Now listen to me carefully. You do not fight spiritual warfare with panic. You fight it with discipline. Guard your mind. Not every thought is yours. Guard your words. Do not casually declare defeat. Guard your environment. What you allow repeatedly becomes atmosphere. If you wake up at night, do not fear it. Use it. Pray. Declare peace. Speak protection. Do not entertain anxiety. Interrupt it. If cycles have followed your family, break them intentionally. Forgive where necessary. Renounce what was opened ignorantly. Remove objects tied to darkness. Be deliberate. Spiritual laziness invites pressure. Spiritual discipline builds defense. Midnight is not your enemy. Ignorance is. You are not hunted because you are weak. You are targeted because you carry value. But value defended becomes untouchable. The greatest lie I believed was that people were helpless. They are not. You are not. Awareness is your weapon. Obedience is your shield. Consistency is your reinforcement. If you remain passive, cycles repeat. If you become intentional, patterns break. I left because I saw too many destinies survive what was meant to destroy them. I left because I realized fear was exaggerated. I left because I encountered authority greater than ritual. And now you know what happens after 12 a.m. The question is not whether darkness moves. It does. The question is whether you will. You are not a victim of the night. You are not at the mercy of unseen forces. You carry authority that darkness cannot override. Midnight does not belong to fear. It responds to power. Stand alert. Speak boldly. Live disciplined. And let every assignment sent against you collapse under your awareness.